Hello everybody, today really is a bit of a bonus video, a totally unexpected surprise, but a pleasant one nevertheless. This is allegedly the best Ferrari 360 in the world, and I just so happen to have the road where I think I can find out if that's true. Some of you may recognise the car already. It appeared on a seen-through glass video a few years ago and is very well known in Ferrari circles. It's the brainchild of a man called 360 Trev, and he bought this about 20 odd years ago when it was only 18 months old. Funnily enough, both he and my friend Scott, known to many as Rossa, bought 360 Modenas in the 2000s, were both in similar industries, and decided to do rather bold things with their cars. However, they each took a very different path. Scott decided to go the route of building essentially a challenge Stradale. In hindsight, I'm sure even he would tell you what he probably should have done was just bought one. However, Trevor went a very different route with this car, as I'm sure you can tell just by looking at it. This is a pretty significant deviation from even the Stradale. This car is made up largely not of challenge Stradale parts, but challenge ones, the race car. So it has things like the challenge door cards. They look similar to the Stradale ones, but they are lighter. It has the buckets as you would find in a challenge car. Again, these are considerably lighter than you'd find in a Stradale. Regular 360 seats are about 30 odd kilos. Challenge Stradale ones, about half that. These, half again. You'll also, I'm sure, have already noticed the big wing on the back, which I have to say, in person, does look a lot better than I'm sure it does in photos. It's a very elegantly sculpted carbon fibre piece taken from a race car, as is the bonnet at the front, one of only about 10 or so items in the wild made by Michelotto. That's proper. I haven't actually driven Scott's car, though I have driven a genuine Stradale. There are two key differences between the last one of those that I drove and this. First off, this one's left-hand drive, which means a few things for me, but not really for you. The other is that this is a 6-speed manual, and it has the carbon fibre gear knob from an F50, which I quite like. On top of all of that, Trevor's also added his special sauce, because he is the man behind the remap you may also know about that See-Through Glass has on his 360. So this car currently makes around 440 horsepower, but more impressively, about 315 pound-foot of torque. And that's paired with a car that now has a wet weight of sub 1,200 kilos. Apparently, in certain configurations, this car's been as low as 1,130 kilos. That's bonkers. That's Lotus Exige V6 weight. That's crazy. For reference, a standard one of these is 1,450 to 1,500 kilos, and a Stradale, in real terms, about 1,380. So this is considerably lighter than even a Stradale, and it still has some concessions to livability. I know looking at it, you might think it's all hardcore, serious and race car. It's got the wheels from a 430 Challenge, the brakes from a 430 Challenge. You'd expect this to be all nasty and unpleasant and horrible and unlivable. But it's not. It's actually kinda compliant. Firm, yes, but not unpleasant. It still has electric windows. See? And air conditioning too. Trev actually drove this car about 400 miles yesterday as he had to come up to Scotland for business. That's the reason we wound up bumping into each other via a mutual friend. And very kindly, he said, yeah, sure, you can make a video with the car. So, if this seems a little less researched than my average video, I do apologise. The reason for that is this is a little less researched than my average video. With luck, we should have... Still getting used to this car. Still getting used to this car. With luck behind us, we're now going to have a pretty clear stretch of road. It's a very technical, very demanding bit of road, this. Quite entertaining, and I'm going to put the car into sport mode, which will change the mapping for the exhaust, change the mapping for the dampers, and even those Trev has reprofiled. So in software it behaves a little bit differently. He, like me, prefers a car to work with the road. He holds Lotus up as the high watermark in how a car should handle. So let's see just how Lotusy he's managed to make this Ferrari. Quite addictive, this thing. It really, really is. Love the gearbox, so cooperative. Being on the left-hand side is making me a little bit more cautious than I might otherwise be, and as you can probably tell, this is a somewhat narrow road. Now, a few more things about the way this car's been set up. Trev likes a car to have as little understeer as it possibly can. What this means is I'm not going to get a warning from the front when it wants to break away. It rained yesterday, not for very long, but what that means is in certain sections it's still a little bit damp on the road. Not all that much to be concerned about, but something simply to note. It is that increased torque figure, 315 pound-foot. That's about 20% over the regular car that Trevor's actually more proud of than the overall power. He's also done work to improve the throttle response and make the whole car just that much more exciting for a keen driver. I would say the work has paid off. One of the other interesting things he's done with this car in terms of setup is it runs now essentially no tow whatsoever. So it's a car you need to respect. That being said, I was concerned that the off-center response might be a little bit too much even for myself, but happily it's not. It's actually a lot of the Ferrari V12s which have the really darty steering racks, and of course it was the later V8s that got it too, 458 onwards. This still has a relatively slow rack compared to a modern car. It's also more compliant than you might expect. Now I'm in the firmer suspension mode, you can probably see me being jiggled about just a little bit more, but honestly, it's really not unlivable. I've mostly got it in sport mode so you can hear it, and I hope you're enjoying it, and I've got the microphone in the right place. In truth though, I think actually regular mode is better damped for this particular piece of tarmac, so I'm going to switch back to that. One of the other changes made to this car is, of course, with the tyres, necessitated by the change of wheels. But you might expect something like this, someone would just want to go for the most hardcore, most aggressive rubber they could find. Fit some Cup 2s or some Trofeo Rs. But no, this car is actually wearing Michelin Pilot Sport 4S, which I really appreciate because it means the car is a lot friendlier when the weather is against you and the road is a little bit slippy. It also means that from cold it has a lot more grip, and the tyre itself is a little softer too. So it's actually a rather pleasant and compliant thing. This section of road is quite epic, particularly with the fog that's moved in this morning. The brakes I must give special mention to. You would again think that something with the brakes from a race car with race pads would just be horrible, but in fact they're not. They're actually, I think, perhaps a little bit more aggressive than I thought they were going to be on the initial bite. If anything, that's a very good thing, because I was worried with endurance pads and big racy carbon brakes, they just wouldn't be interested in working when they're cold. But actually, nothing could be further from the truth. The power power here, very linear, very smooth. The rev limit on this car, I believe, is not currently as high as it is with Sam's. Thanks to Trev's special ECU source, a very well set up one of these can now rev to 9,000 RPM safely. Today though, I don't really have any need of that. I'm instead enjoying the mid-range and the beautiful gearbox. I am also genuinely impressed at how livable this car is. I thought it was going to be impossibly noisy, horrible, rattly, loud. Nothing of the sort. It's very, very pleasant, this car. Okay, it's hardly a Rolls-Royce. It's still a firm, old-school supercar. But using that as a metric, compared to, say, the Lamborghini Countach that I drove not that long ago, this is a Rolls-Royce. Seriously. The throttle response really is improved in this car. Until I spoke to Trev and he explained to me how Ferrari do things, I didn't quite get it. To compensate essentially for the iffy 1990s traction control, what Ferrari did with this was essentially build in a little bit of a delay. You see, unlike a cable throttle car like my 550, where your foot directly dictates the throttle opening, here you've got a computer in the middle deciding whether it agrees with what you've asked from it. And that means that essentially they can build in just a little bit of smoothness, a little bit of delay, a little bit of aliasing in the throttle opening, making the car a little bit friendlier, particularly to those who don't quite know what's going to happen when they mash their boot all the way down. Unfortunately, for those who do love their cars, what that means is it can often feel like the car's a little down on torque and power and doesn't respond how you'd want it to. With this particular car, no such issue. I would say the steering feel is still just a little bit lacking. It just doesn't talk to you in the way that a Lotus, for example, would. However, there is a nice weighting to it. The front end really does grip with some authority. Very direct, very enjoyable. And with 305 section rears at the back, once they're warm, there's plenty of grip in those too. Wow, I love this car. I love this road too. A total accidental find, but one I'm certainly going to be revisiting. Oh. I'm enjoying this. Best 360 in the world. Best one I've driven. Anyway, that's all from me. A big thanks to you as ever for watching. A huge thank you to Trev for allowing me to come and play with his pride and joy. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all for the next one. Bye-bye.